The following video has been created without the use of AI. Please support your human content creators by liking the video and commenting something down below. Subscribing is optional. Now please, enjoy the show. Day shift leader Brian stood next to a crying child as he held their little hand tightly. Meanwhile, the animatronic that caused this was groveling at his feet. He was apologetic, but this didn't change the fact that he single-handedly ruined this customer's day. And in the eyes of Brian, that was a terrible misdeed. But what happened here? Honestly, it was a form of miscommunication, really. Son, while nice, could be overbearing, and he had a propensity to be overly dogmatic when it came to his enforcement of the daycare's rules. To the point where Brian and one of his guards, going by the nickname Terminator, occasionally discussed if the daycare was more like World War II Germany or World War II Russia. And why was the kid crying? He drew something on the daycare's easily washable plastic walls. Apparently the child had watched their brother tag the walls of his school and they wanted to mimic that. Thing is, this was against daycare rules, and yet a very forgivable misdeed, as the walls were easily washable. Son was programmed to just make the child use a wet sponge to clean it, while teaching a lesson that tagging walls is a bad thing. It was meant to be educational, meant to be sweet, but with the way Son was, with his general twitchiness, he was unable to switch his demeanor quickly enough upon realizing he went a little too far. Brian squatted down next to the kid. They were in the lobby of the daycare, away from most prying eyes, with only 2 other security guards in place. Brian placed both hands on the kid's shoulders. "Hey, listen, champ," he started. And the kid looked at him. Tears were still running out of their eyes, but after the big, cool security man had been on their side, they had calmed down a little. How do I say this? In our world, there are good and bads and grays. He wasn't sure how much knowledge the kid could work through right now, so he kept it simple. It was just a pep talk. And this is a gray meets bad situation. You did something bad, but the follow-up bad you got as a response, that went too far. The kid nodded, and then Brian smiled. "You're smart, champ. So what do we say? How about we punish both of you?" Brian glanced at Son before looking back at the child. "Well, you got your comeuppance already. Trust me, getting shouted at by a big, mean robot for rule breaking is scary enough as it is." "Mean?" shouted Son, but the glare Brian threw at him was enough to keep the animatronic quiet. "And I don't think you'll ever draw on our walls again after this, right?" The kid nodded. "In the end, that's all that matters, really. And now..." Brian raised a finger and smirked. "Let me teach you that justice is truly blind." The kid's face turned to confusion, and then Brian leaned in closer and whispered something into their ear. He needed to repeat it twice for them to fully understand. But as the security guard leaned back with an almost evil grin, both man and child nodded at each other. He stood back, his hands neatly folded behind his back, as Brian built himself up to maximum size. Brian was just barely under 6 feet, at 5'9", according to an accurate height tester at the Pizzaplex pharmacy. He was quite annoyed at that, but hey, at least putting on any shoe put him at 6 feet. That was something, at least. He then gently nudged the kid's shoulder, and with a shaking voice, the kid repeated exactly what Brian said. "Son, as punishment for ruining my experience at daycare today, They looked up at Brian for a moment, He nodded slowly and reassuringly.
No boyfriend time today.
The kid didn't fully understand these words. Jess recited what Brian told them, but it caused the robot to completely break down. They tilted their head. A little wave of satisfaction, but also pity overcame them. "Hey champ," said Brian. "Just so you know, he's gonna be really cuddly for the rest of the day to you now. Hoping you don't live the punishment. Okay? Stay strong." Brian smiled brightly, which caused the child to smile in return. They felt oddly proud of themselves. Yes, it was boyfriend time. A very important internal event at the Pizzaplex. It was a great tool of leverage for the human employees at the entertainment megaplex. It was set up on a small server space within the server farm of the building, only utilizing the smallest possible amount to keep it running. It was essentially a virtual experience created just for the daycare attendant, for both his primary personalities and you, the new nurse animatronic, Nurse Bendy, as it was discovered that you had compatible personalities, again for both Sun and Moon. Mostly due to you being motherly with the propensity at giving a little too much candy with your medications. The perfect foil for the overly protective daycare attendant. Or as the on-duty engineer of the Pizzaplex had called it, they're like a bipolar dad being married to a woman with a helper complex. The difference between a helper complex and a savior complex was that people with a savior complex did it for their own validation, while people with a helper complex did it from the goodness of their own heart. Noticing this compatibility, it was decided that, uniquely to any Vesper location with a Nurse Bendy animatronic and a daycare attendant animatronic, that the two of you were dating. As your relationship had positive effects on you as well as Sun and Moon. Of course, since you were a newer model animatronic, you had slightly more sophisticated software due to improved hardware. A sort of 1.5 version of Glamrock's. Not really new in the sense that you were the start of a new generation, but definitely more advanced enough to be a distinct outlier. Or in other words, you never were the reason a monthly boyfriend time may or may not be happening. Though then again, all your interactions were limited to customers in pain, and it was your duty to ease said pain, so perhaps your limited interactions with customers were a good explanation as to why there never had been a complaint given towards you. Either way, the child stood strong and didn't take away the punishment for Sun. And meanwhile, Moon had managed to keep it together for an entire month, which meant that boyfriend time was happening tonight, just without Sun. You awoke on a semi-hard ground. Felt like the asphalt of a different simulated world. You knew what it meant. There were no true soft things in the entire digital world you found yourself in, so rock and stone were made more like the rubber padding on the daycare floor, just to give a little bit of softness. Your eyes were still closed as you moved your hands over the ground. It felt nice, like ceramic. In the digital world, you and your boyfriends were given human bodies, mostly due to limitations, but it was very nice to have actual skin. Finally, you took your first breath, filling your fake lungs with neutral-smelling air. Neutral. So this world was definitely not an inside one. You liked guessing where you ended up before opening your eyes, but you were a little speechless when you did open them, as you were truly surprised. You'd never been here before. You're staring up into a night sky, or more, space. You turned your head to the side, seeing more space. Not space in the sense of a room, but space in the sense of the universe. Slowly you stood up. The ground, which too was just space, was quite obviously just an acid made invisible, but it was quite trippy to say the least. You're practically walking on nothing. Wait a second. You thought as you reached forward, grabbing one of the floating stars before you. You stared at it, floating in your hand. You did it hard, making a little jump. It was the realization screwing with your brain that those stars weren't just painted on some skybox. They were actual objects floating around you like holograms or fireflies. And out of curiosity, you closed your hand around the shiny thing, though it just phased through your hand. Oh well, not too sophisticated these worlds, though they did move when you swapped your hand at them. So where was Moon? Honestly, you wondered how he'd react to the lights. Speak of the devil. Moon stood in his human form with his back to you a couple of feet away. He had his right arm stretched upwards, the tips of his fingers grazing the outer edge of what appeared to be a galaxy, circling in the sky, or, well, circling space. You approached him quietly from behind. But before you could jokingly scare him, he spoke up. "Nurse Bendy," he said when you were close to him. "The lights don't hurt me. Surprisingly. You must admit, having these non-light sensitive human eyes, the light looks beautiful." You've wrapped your arms around him from behind. In this digital world, the both of you were in a complete state of undress, making the touch even warmer, softer, and intimate. Moon exhaled calmly. He preferred worlds where the both of you wore clothes to begin with, just because he liked taking them off of you. His arm was still touching the galaxy, and he leaned his head back until he bumped onto your chest. You knew he hated how much smaller he was than you in the digital world. Here he was, small, bordering on lanky. If it wasn't for just enough muscles to make his body look healthy, he would look malnourished. His eyes were sunken in and red, and he had short, white hair. If anything, he looked like someone was trying to draw a very realistic anime character. Moon exhaled out of his mouth. I won this month by doing absolutely nothing, Nurse Bendy, he commented almost proudly. Did you know the daycare had no nap time since the last month? Did you know why? You thought about the boo-boos and ouchies you had gotten. There was a slight increase in birthday-related injuries. It could be that parents, coincidentally, booked the entire daycare all month, and considering Son isn't here, he committed an act that prevented you... committing an act that prevents you from joining boyfriend time on a birthday is... And considering Son isn't here, committing an act that prevents him from joining boyfriend time on a birthday, well, that is very, very bad. Very bad. Wait, are we getting scrapped? Lovingly, you leaned your head down, gently kissing his forehead. If he would have gotten you two scrapped, you wouldn't be here right now. You made circling motions on his chest to comfort him.
I don't know if this is a precedent. You probably don't know either, Nurse Bendy.
You thought for a moment and decided to tease him a little. Why, worried about your other half? He blushed and narrowed his eyes.
No.
To come back to your question, there has been a couple of weeks. Feza Blast was practically occupied by multiple birthday parties to the point where it might as well have been shut down for 3 weeks. 21 children wanted a Bear in Space themed birthday party, all in the same month.
Interesting. Guess this must be it then.
Moon placed his hands on yours. He felt warm, and it made you smile.
I suppose we should enjoy ourselves while we can then, Nurse Bendy. You know, without that annoying other me.
He turned around in your arms, pressing his face between your chest, only to then turn his head back and groan.
I can't breathe, but it feels so good.
You let him inhale and exhale once or twice before you kissed him on the mouth. It was soft and passionate. Lovingly, he increased his weight in your arms, and you hummed pleased in response. Releasing him from your hold, lowered yourself on the invisible ground, invitingly so, spreading your legs. You smirked, and quickly and excited, Moon climbed on top of you. Using his elbows on the ground for support, he lied down on top of you. He kissed your shoulder, slowly going up to your neck, while you rubbed the entire length of your body against him. He exhaled, excited, his breath brushing against your skin.
How big do you think we are right now?
He suddenly mumbled into your ear. You gave him a cat-like cheeky smile.
Well, something is still growing, so it's kinda hard to say. Oh, you know what I mean, Nurse Bendy.
You sighed. Well, that galaxy you touched was about the size of your body, and a singular sun or star to us might as well be a mere wisp. I would say very big. Moon looked at you, and you both chuckled.
I could tell that. That we were really big. Well, anyways, Nurse Bendy, just so you know, you are my star, shining brighter than the rest of them.
He kissed you again on the mouth, his slimy tongue finally breaching your lips. Humming pleased and joyfully, you allowed him access to your body. This truly was a wonderful boyfriend time. Hey, you watched the video until the very end. That's very kind of you. But before I say goodbye, I have to shout out all of my lovely channel members, especially my high-ranking darling stewards, who get a members-only video every month. Join the tier for just $4.99. Anyways, we have Nicolai Hatcher, Maxi Cat, Alison Watkins, Bella Mare, Mystic Jade 111, Giovanna Moretti, Twilight Mia, Angry Boxman, Hella, Anonymous Weep, and Nicodemus D. Thank you for supporting me. Also, thank you to everybody else who is supporting me. You are keeping me alive.